It was just another ordinary day for Eden. The soft aroma of herbs lingered in the air as she organized the house and prepared to light the fire. The sound of pots clinking blended with the distant chirping of birds. Her movements were firm and precise, like those of someone who knows what needs to be done. But deep down, her heart was restless. Ever since Simon had begun following Jesus, the routine of her home had never been the same. That day, as she bent down to gather firewood, she sensed an unexpected presence. A chill ran through her body, but it wasn't fear. It was the feeling of peace she only experienced in moments of deep prayer. When she lifted her eyes, she saw Jesus standing at the door. He was watching her with immeasurable calm, that peace that doesn't need words to be understood. His sudden arrival made her pause for a moment. It wasn't common to see him there without prior notice. For a moment, Eden remained silent, processing the scene. She didn't know what to say, but her heart filled with a mixture of surprise and joy. Without hesitation, she did what she always knew how to do best: care. She thought about offering him something warm to drink. It was her way of showing hospitality and love. After all, serving was part of who she was. As she pondered what she could offer, Jesus broke the silence in a way that caught her off guard. "You were the first to see in Simon what no one else saw." Those words struck deep in her heart. Jesus didn't need to explain what he meant, because Eden knew exactly what he was revealing. From the beginning, when everyone saw Simon as nothing more than an impulsive and hot-headed fisherman, she had seen something more. She saw courage, boldness, and passion. Her mother, however, had warned her, "You will be drawn to his wild nature, but you will regret it." Now, looking back, Eden remembered that phrase. With a smile on her face, she thought, "What would my mother say now?" Because indeed, Simon had changed. There was no longer just ordinary fishing, but a greater mission. His wild nature was still there, but now it was channeled into something divine. As these thoughts passed through her mind, Simon appeared. He approached with a worried expression and announced that he was going to the city to sell some nets. It was a common task, but the way he spoke revealed his intention to leave everything in order before departing. He made sure to guarantee that Eden would have enough money while he was away. "I just want to leave a little extra money for you, Eden, so that while I'm gone, everything will be fine." Eden nodded, but Jesus, who had been silently observing the scene, intervened. In a serene yet firm manner, he asked Simon to let go of the nets and go take care of his mother-in-law. His words weren't just a request. They carried a gentle yet undeniable authority. It was as if Jesus was telling Simon that not everything needed to be done in haste or with worry. Simon hesitated for a moment, but when he looked at Jesus, he understood the message. He knew that if Jesus spoke, it was because there was something deeper in that instruction. And so, Simon let go of the nets. "You and Simon are one." That's what Jesus said to Eden immediately after. He knew she needed to hear those words. In the culture of her time, many women were seen merely as support. But Jesus was highlighting a truth the world had forgotten. Simon's calling was also Eden's calling. The sacrifices Simon made, the absences, the hardships, all of it fell on her as well. But what no one saw was that she, too, had a mission. For a long time, Eden thought that the weight of Simon's mission was his alone. She saw herself merely as the woman who waited at home. But in that moment, Jesus opened her eyes to a greater truth. She was also part of God's plan. It wasn't just Simon's calling, but their calling together. When Jesus said she would know her role at the right time, Eden felt a mix of relief and responsibility. Yes, she too had been chosen. It wasn't just Simon who carried the weight of the mission. She wasn't a mere spectator. She was part of the mission. The words of Jesus remained etched in her mind. I see you. How many times had Eden felt invisible? How many nights had she stayed awake waiting for Simon to return without anyone noticing? How many times had she prepared food for the two of them and watched her husband leave for a greater mission while she stayed behind? But Jesus said, I see you. It was as if God was saying, I see your effort. I see your pain. I see your sacrifice. It doesn't matter how many times people fail to see or recognize our efforts. God sees. He sees every uncried tear, every silent prayer, and every act of courage the world ignores. As Jesus spoke, Eden began to reflect on what it meant to live with Simon. It wasn't easy. If it was already complicated to deal with the normal Simon, with his stubbornness and impatience, imagine dealing with the worried Simon. That worry weighed on him and consequently on her. But now she knew. She wasn't alone. Jesus said he wouldn't ask her to go through all of that without taking care of some things first. It was his way of saying that God takes care of the details we don't see. Even when we're busy, overwhelmed, and think no one is supporting us, God is already taking care of everything. With a lighter heart, Eden finally understood. She didn't need to carry the world alone. She was seen, loved, and part of something much greater. The story of Eden teaches us that, many times, the role of the chosen ones is not visible. It is easy to see Simon's purpose, the fisherman who became a disciple. He was at the center of everything, in the great actions. But what about Eden? Eden was as chosen as Simon. Her role was different, but not lesser. Like many women, she took care of the invisible. And yet, Jesus saw her. He not only saw her, but he valued her and gave her a mission. Maybe you feel like Eden. Maybe you are tired of doing what no one sees, of fulfilling tasks that no one recognizes. But today, Jesus says to you, I see you. This phrase holds incredible power. God sees you. He sees your struggles, your efforts, your sacrifices. He knows how much you have dedicated yourself. It doesn't matter if the world doesn't notice, because the God who created the universe sees every detail of your life. Simon was chosen to be a fisher of men, but Eden was chosen to be a light within the home. Many times, God's calling in our lives is not about what we do in public, but about what we do in silence. Just as Jesus saw Eden, he also sees you. He sees your nights of worry, your silent prayers, and your sacrifices. He sees when you give up something for yourself to care for others. And just as he said to Eden, he says to you today, I see you. And when God sees, he not only recognizes but also prepares the way for you. Just as Jesus assured Eden that he would take care of the necessary things so she wouldn't have to carry everything alone, God does the same for us. So, if today you feel overwhelmed and invisible, remember, you are seen, you are loved, and you are part of God's plan. Like Eden, you too are an essential piece in the divine mission. It doesn't matter if the world doesn't see you, God sees you, and that is enough. Christmas is a time of celebration, unity, and reflection. More than gifts and parties, this moment invites us to look at the true purpose of our lives. Many times we feel lost, overwhelmed, or as if our efforts are not recognized. But today, I want to share a story of faith and purpose that teaches us the true meaning of Christmas. Let's talk about Eden and Simon, two people who, just like you, were chosen by God. Even so, they had to face challenges, fulfill their daily tasks, and deal with the weight of a mission far greater than they could imagine. It is a story of love, courage, and faith that reminds us that even in difficult times, God sees us and never abandons us. The journey of Eden, a chosen one. No one saw, but Jesus did. Eden's life was like that of many women of her time. She took care of the house, prepared meals, and handled daily tasks while her husband Simon worked hard as a fisherman. It is easy to think that Eden was not seen, that her role was secondary. But Jesus showed that this was not true. One day Jesus appeared unexpectedly at Eden's house. His presence alone was already a sign of something special. While Eden prepared the fire and organized the house, Jesus observed her in silence, but with the gaze of someone who sees the invisible. It was at that moment that he said, "You were the first to see in Simon what no one else saw." This phrase carries enormous weight. Many times we are so focused on great deeds that we forget the importance of what happens behind the scenes. Eden saw Simon's potential before anyone else. While others saw him as a man with a strong and impulsive temperament, she saw courage, passion, and strength in him. How many times, like Eden, do you feel that your role in people's lives is not recognized? How many times do you support, sacrifice, and help others, but don't receive the value you deserve? Eden's story reminds us that God sees what no one else sees. Your strength, your effort, and your dedication do not go unnoticed by Him. At Christmas, God invites us to see beyond appearances and to recognize the hidden purpose behind each daily task. Simon's mission, the call that changes lives, but also requires sacrifice. Simon was a fisherman. His routine was exhausting. He spent nights at sea, casting nets and bringing in fish to support his family. Simon was not a perfect man, but he was someone willing to do whatever it took to fulfill his mission. One day, Jesus called him to something greater. "Come, follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men." To follow Jesus, Simon had to leave his nets behind. This does not mean he abandoned his responsibilities, but that, out of love for God, he had to trust. This decision was not his alone. It was a decision shared with Eden, because as Jesus said, "You and Simon are one." He cannot make sacrifices that are not also yours. Here is a powerful lesson for us. Many times, God's call in our lives is not just about us. It affects the people around us, family, friends, and even those we do not know. This reminds us that Christmas is a time of unity and collaboration. The birth of Jesus was not the work of one person alone. Joseph, Mary, the shepherds, and the wise men all played an essential role in the story. Just as Simon had to let go of his nets, we too need to let go of certain things to fulfill God's purpose. It could be fear, doubt, the need for control, or the desire for recognition. What do you need to let go of this Christmas to follow the plan God has for you? Jesus sees you, just as he saw Eden. One of the most touching phrases Jesus said to Eden was, "I see you." These words echo to this day. Many times we believe our struggles are invisible, that God does not care, or that we are alone. But the truth is that God sees you. He sees your sleepless nights, your silent prayers, and your daily efforts that no one notices. Jesus knew it was not easy for Eden. He knew that Simon's sacrifice was also hers. He knew that Simon's absence would leave a void at home. But Jesus did not leave her alone. He assured her that he would take care of certain things so she could continue. That is what God does for us. At Christmas, God sent Jesus into the world to show us that we are not alone. He takes care of every detail, and even when the journey seems difficult, He is by our side. Christmas lessons. What the story of Eden, Simon, and Jesus teaches us. Christmas is a time of love, hope, and renewed faith. More than celebrating the birth of Jesus, it is a moment to reflect on the purpose God has for each of us. Many times we look at the manger and forget that this story is not just about Jesus, but also about the people who accepted their roles in the divine plan, even when it required sacrifices. This is the case of Mary, Joseph, the shepherds, and even the wise men. But there is another story that teaches us valuable Christmas lessons, the story of Eden, Simon, and Jesus. Each of them played an important role in God's purpose, and their journeys reveal 4 fundamental lessons for this time of year. True love requires shared sacrifices. At Christmas, we are invited to think about love, but not just the love we receive, rather the love we give. True love requires effort, dedication, and sacrifice from both sides. Just as Jesus left heaven to be born on earth, Simon and Eden also had to let go of many things to fulfill God's purpose. Simon was called to leave his nets and follow Jesus, leaving behind the work that provided for his household. But this calling did not only affect his life. Simon's calling directly impacted Eden's life, his wife. While Simon went out to fulfill the mission, Eden stayed home, taking care of the family responsibilities. This shows us that true love is not selfish. It is not limited to one person, but requires effort from everyone involved. Christmas reminds us that to love is to share sacrifices. This happens in relationships, families, marriages, and even friendships. When someone in the family is facing a challenge, true love calls us to share the burden. This Christmas, ask yourself, what sacrifice am I willing to make for the people I love? Remember that Jesus made the greatest sacrifice of all. He not only was born in a manger, but lived and died to save humanity. To love is more than giving gifts. It is giving of yourself. Being invisible to men does not mean being invisible to God. How many times have you felt invisible, doing good, helping others, but without receiving recognition? That is how Eden felt. While Simon was seen and recognized as a disciple of Jesus, Eden stayed behind the scenes. She was not part of the great events, did not travel from village to village with Jesus, and did not witness the miracles, but what she did was crucial to Simon's mission. Many people feel this way during Christmas. While everyone is celebrating, someone is preparing the dinner, cleaning up, or taking on tasks that no one notices. It is common to think that if no one is watching, perhaps what we do has no value. But Eden's story teaches us that what is invisible to men is not invisible to God. Jesus said to Eden, "I see you." These words show us that God sees our efforts even when no one else does. Every prayer said in silence, every act of patience, every moment of dedication invisible to the eyes of the world is seen by God. This Christmas, remember, God sees you. He sees your tears, your efforts, and the love you put into every task, even if no one applauds. He knows how much you have dedicated yourself, and He cares. God does not forget to take care of you. The third lesson from this story is one of the most comforting. Many times, amidst the end-of-year rush, financial worries, and family responsibilities, we feel overwhelmed. However, Eden's story reminds us that God does not forget to take care of us. Simon was about to leave on another mission alongside Jesus. Before leaving, he expressed concern for Eden, saying he wanted to leave enough money so she would be fine while he was away. This shows the heart of a caring and concerned husband. But Jesus intervened and told Simon to let go of the nets and trust that God would take care of everything. Jesus assured Simon that he would take care of Eden and that Simon did not need to leave with worry. This is one of the greatest examples of trust and surrender. Many times we want to control everything, ensure every detail, but the Christmas lesson here is clear. God takes care of us, even when we are not in control. This Christmas, perhaps you are worrying about the bills, the dinner, the gifts for the children, and other daily demands. But God is saying to you what He said to Simon: let go of the nets. Trust that God is taking care of every detail. Maybe you cannot see it now, but He is already moving the pieces so that everything happens in the right way. God's purpose requires faith and courage. Finally, the last lesson this story teaches us is that following God's purpose requires faith and courage. Simon needed courage to let go of the nets. It was what he knew how to do. It was what sustained his household. He had to set aside security to follow a calling that did not offer immediate guarantees. Eden, in turn, needed courage to stay. While Simon left, she remained. And that was not easy. Just as Simon needed to let go of the nets, we also need to let go of certain things that hold us back. It could be fear, anxiety, the desire for control, or even attachment to material things. Christmas is an opportunity for total surrender to God. Just as Mary said yes to God's purpose and accepted carrying Jesus in her womb, we too are called to say yes to God's purpose. We do not know all the details of the plan. We do not know where we are going, but we need to trust. This Christmas, what do you need to let go of to follow God's purpose? Perhaps it is the need for control, anxiety, guilt, or even the pursuit of recognition. Remember that Jesus was born in a manger, a humble place but full of purpose. He did not need a palace to fulfill His mission. Conclusion. What does Christmas want to teach us? The story of Eden, Simon, and Jesus reveals profound truths that connect with the essence of Christmas. True love requires effort and sacrifice from everyone. Being invisible to the world does not mean being invisible to God. He takes care of us, even when we are not in control. And finally, God's purpose requires faith and courage. This Christmas, look at the manger and see the same message. Mary and Joseph accepted God's purpose with courage and faith. They sacrificed, left behind their expectations, and trusted that God would take care of every detail. They too were invisible to the eyes of men, but not to the eyes of God. Just as Eden was a fundamental piece in Simon's purpose, you too are an essential piece in God's purpose. Even if your role seems small, He sees you. Even if you think you are behind the scenes, God watches over you and takes care of you. So, this Christmas, love in a shared way, even if it requires sacrifice. Trust that God sees every effort you make and that He takes care of every detail of your life. Let go of the nets that hold you back and follow the purpose God has for you. May Christmas be a moment of rebirth, of leaving behind fear and worries. Remember that God does not forget you. He sees you, loves you, and is taking care of you. This Christmas, trust, love, wait, and follow God's purpose for your life. Whatever your situation, the message is clear. God sees you. He knows your effort. He recognizes your sacrifice. Just as Jesus saw Eden, He sees you. Just as Jesus took care of Simon's concerns, He also takes care of yours. Just as Simon had to let go of his nets, perhaps you too need to let go of something this Christmas to fulfill God's purpose. What are you willing to let go of to follow the plan God has for you? What do you need to place in God's hands this Christmas? If you feel this message has spoken to your heart, pray with me. Lord, thank you for seeing me, even when I feel invisible. Thank you for reminding me that, just like Eden and Simon, I too am chosen. I know my purpose is greater than my eyes can see. Help me to let go of the nets that hold me back and to trust in you. I place my heart and my worries in your hands. Take care of me, just as you took care of Eden and Simon. In Jesus' name, amen. This Christmas, remember, God sees you. He has chosen you. He takes care of you. Just as Jesus said to Eden, he also says to you today, I see you. May this message bring hope and peace to your heart. Merry Christmas. May God bless you and your family. Hello, this is George, your spiritual leader. I want to invite you on a journey of faith and transformation with the devotional The Chosen, 40 Days of Spiritual Connection. For 40 days, you will be guided by daily reflections that will strengthen your faith to face any challenge, renew your hope in moments of doubt, enhance your spirit, and bring you closer to God. Each message was created to help you discover God's purpose for your life and prepare you for the challenges ahead. Do not walk this path alone. Start today and allow God to transform your life.